my dear ladies and gentlemen. Ladies, hope you all are having a fruitful day at the My Avtar job fair. Did you know that women are more attentive and better listeners than men? I hear you say we knew this. Yes, but did you know that listening is a very critical soft skill that organizations look for? Scott Peck, the American psychiatrist and the author of the best selling book, The Road Less Traveled, says what people get admired and appreciated for in a community are their soft skills. Their sense of humor, their ability to listen, their capacity for empathy are the most sought for. Many of the soft skills are often referred to as transformational leadership in the business parlance. These skills encourage motivation, performance, and thereby bringing in business results. As part of the work that we do at Avtar, we conduct several research studies in our endeavor to creating equitable workspaces. Avtar conducted a research few years back to identify the critical success factors for women in sales. Senior leaders from industries such as FMCG, retail, pharma, BFSI, and IT all shared their perceptions on what contributed to the success of women professionals. As a result, in the study, identified the Supta skill model, which enables the channelizing of the aspiration amidst women to create a successful, sustainable, economically rewarding career. The Supta competency model outlines 7 critical skills to build robust careers based on the responses of the analysis that we conducted. The first one is survive, prospecting, hearing, urgency, target decision makers, authoritativeness, and finally, approval. These soft skills are imperative to the success in sales of a woman professional. So these 7 skills are not only enable building competencies to hone convincing and closing skills critical for a sales function, but they will also ensure that women leverage this outside of a formal sales career. Yes, it's no secret that the right combination of soft and strategic skills is a magic pair. Organizations today are constantly looking for talent with this magic pair. At this point, it is my privilege and honor to introduce you to our esteemed panelists to the discussion on survival of the friendliest, why soft skills matter. Divya Sathyan, the Director, Human Resources, Genesys India. Divya is passionate about empowering individuals to reach their full potential. She is an expert in handling global initiatives with good exposure to local markets and their best practices. Dr. Kiranmai Pendyala, Head of HR at Western Digital Corporation. Kiran is passionate about empowering individuals to reach their full potential, and she's an expert in handling global initiatives with good exposure to local markets and their best practices. Saji Zacharia, HR Director at Guidehouse India. Saji's expertise is spread across a gamut of functions, including business partnership, leadership development, compensation and benefits, employee relations, performance and talent management, HR transformation, setting up the HR function from the scratch, and organization design and re-engineering. A very warm welcome to each one of you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
Thank you.
May I begin the discussion by seeking opening remarks from each of you individually with the question, why soft skills have become so important today?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
So it's interesting that we're talking about soft skills today in 2022. I have learned that Charles Mann in 1918, that's right, almost a century ago, a little more than a century ago, has come up with a study called a study of engineering education, which actually underscored the importance of soft skills. But it looks like the world hasn't listened. Now, recently, research conducted by Harvard University, Stanford Research Center, and Carnegie Foundation have clearly presented that 85% of job success is based on well-developed soft skills and people skills. I repeat, 85%. So I think that clearly establishes for all of us why soft skills and why this importance or relevance today we're all attributing to or focusing on soft skills.
Thank you, Kiran. Thank you so much. That's a whooping number, 85%. Over to Divya.
Thank you, Lakshmi. And that was a very interesting stat from Kiran. I think the true essence of a person is a combination of IQ and EQ, right? And with the pandemic, the new dynamics which have set at workplace, the new vulnerabilities which have to be addressed are really posing a lot of questions around this skill. I think soft skills are harder to measure, but I think are very critical to someone's success. And I think growingly leaders are realizing the importance of communication, constant communication, if I have to say, and the need to ascertain and assure employees during the pandemic and after which also. So I think this is a very nice topic you picked up, Lakshmi, and I thoroughly want to enjoy the next 45 minutes with the panel exploring this in depth. Thank you.
Thank you, Divya. Thank you. And I'm also looking forward to this enriching panel. Over to you, Saji.
Thank you. So really interesting to cover this topic today, how soft skills have become so important today. But just echoing what Kiran and Divya said, I think soft skills have always been important. I mean, in our industries that we operate in and in our hiring philosophy, it's always been there. I mean, we are always hiring for attitude and ability and train for skill. That's been the mantra of most hiring managers and HR talent acquisition people, that when you're going out and looking, you're hiring for people who have the right drive, who have the passion, and who have the willingness to come in and experiment and do things differently. That's what most organizations are looking for today when they're hiring. I guess the pandemic has really accentuated that in terms of bringing it to the fore, and as we are working remotely, made the soft skills of being compassionate, humane in our approach towards our employees, the well-being of employees, and the whole concept of empathy. It's just brought it to the fore. So I believe soft skills has been at the the core skill that's always been the focus for most organizations. That's where true leaders have stood out. People who've really shown compassion, kindness, and that great communicating ability in terms of listening skills and being able to communicate clearly and simply have really stood out. And those organizations have also made a difference.
Thank you, Saji. Thank you so much. In fact, Divya, you spoke about EQ and also the soft and the hard skills. And women tend to get associated with more of soft skills, and organizations and leaders are increasingly realizing the value that these core abilities and skills add to the workplace and also around. Right, people skills matter, communications matter, like Saji said, and civility matters certainly. So, talking about the hard and soft, the hard part of the soft skills, Divya, I would want to ask you one question. So, what are
Sure.
the typical key soft skills that complement a candidate's hard skills that hiring managers look for?
Great question, Lakshmi. I think hiring managers act like brand ambassadors in every organization, right? And I think we all understand that recruitment is a team sport. Our company values revolve around, embracing empathy, fly information, and go big. And I think that always, is in the back of the hiring manager's mind. And when he or she is looking out for his team members, I think the unconscious bias training, which has happened throughout the organization, comes into play. We look out for candidates who are, thinking out of the box. We look out for candidates who have the can-do attitude. We look out for candidates, who can handle ambiguity. So I think these are some of the skills which really complement the hard skills, if I have to answer you in that way. But I also want to bring up concept of the growth mindset in this tough times. I think that's a philosophy we are hearing across organization, across leadership teams. And I want to say the power of yet, which is so powerful that if somebody does not know anything, it's not the end of the game, it's the beginning of the game, right? And I think you should invite and involve and select more such people who practice the power of yet, because they bring in a lot of positivity and optimism to the table. And I would say at Genesys, we just don't go behind unicorns, we create one. So that's my answer to you, Lakshmi.
That's so wonderful, Divya. Thank you so much. I'm going to now ask Kiran to respond to this. What has been the role of soft skills? Say, you've been at the hiring table for a very long time. So, what has been the role of soft skills, say, a few years ago, and how has it evolved in the last few years, or maybe a decade ago, and now how has it evolved in the last few years?
Very, very pertinent question, Lakshmi. And I loved what Divya mentioned earlier, right, in terms of the flavors of soft skills. Now, in the last decade, what is shifting around? We're talking about businesses, we're talking about hiring. Very clearly, the skill set required has shifted. Why is that so? There is much more automation which has come in to play. Today we are talking about AI and ML as the key mantras, irrespective of whichever industry segment you're referring to. So the moment you're talking about automation and artificial intelligence and machine learning coming into play, obviously, what humans can do, if machines are taking over the mundane, the routine, the repetitive tasks, so we're not looking at transactional any longer. And that's where the soft skill element of humans has really become much more significant and important, because we're now looking at each one of us when we bring not the machine, but the human into the workplace and saying, what can they do which a machine cannot? That is where the emotional part, that is where the soft skills part, not the hard skills, has gained more prominence. And that's a shift I think this decade has really given us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kiran. Over to you, Saji, now. So, do the prominence of soft skills that Kiran just mentioned, you've been in different sectors, different industry sectors. I was
Right.
going through your profile. So, do you think the soft skills differ from industry to industry? For example, if you're in the manufacturing sector, there are certain strategic skills certainly differ, technical skills certainly differ. There's no brainer to all of that. But
Yeah.
soft skills, are women, especially if you have to look at women candidates in a particular industry. So, do hiring managers look for a particular set of soft skills in a woman candidate hiring for a manufacturing sector or in an FMCG sector? How does the entire dynamics work there?
I don't think sectors matter, because ultimately you're dealing with people, right? I mean, and you are talking about people, but it's about, maybe if you're looking for, say hiring a salesperson, so you might look for some more, somebody who's very good at negotiating skills, who has, great communicating ability, obviously, in terms of being able to speak well and listen in a sales role. So whereas compared to when you're hiring for a technical role, maybe you don't need somebody who's a great negotiator, but again, you'll still look for somebody with the right kind of attitude, who wants to come in and has the right work ethic. So which is similar to what you would look for anybody else in any other function, also any other industry. So I don't think the people or the soft skills that you're looking for change, but industry wise, but it does change maybe to some extent in terms of the functional roles that you're looking at. But it depends on the organization. You might have some core skills that you're looking for. So like Divya mentioned, there are some basic core skills that every organization defines that it definitely needs to have. So you're definitely looking for somebody who's coming in with a change mindset, who's flexible, who has the right work ethic, who wants to come in and do something different, make a difference, make a change. So those kind of things are things which most organizations look for. Then it depends on the function and the role that you're looking at, which typically tends to gravitate towards the technical side a little bit, but also some of the functional skills. But overall, soft skills don't change sector wise. That's my view.
Thank you, Saji. I'm just going to jump and leapfrog to a question that I thought I would pose towards the end of the discussion, you use the word attitude, Saji, in a remote working scenario. So I understand as a hiring manager, when you see a candidate walking in, so you start measuring the attitude, right? There's certain amount of body language. There are certain other things that you would observe in a candidate, the way the candidate is communicating, the way the candidate is handling the entire. So everything, all of those things matter, right? But in a remote scenario, especially now, I mean, imagine we have the entire job fair virtual, right? So in a remote scenario, how do you sense, because I think attitude is something that you sense, right? You can't measure. So how do you sense the right attitude? And I want each one of you to respond to this. Maybe we can begin with Saji on this.
Yeah, I guess, it's something that you obviously learn and you see over time in people, but it's also about the way they respond to situational situations, to questions, to if they are given a particular situation or a scenario, and how they would react to that. I mean, what will be the kind of response that they will have? I mean, if you put them in a somewhat difficult situation, or you give them a difficult problem, what's their response? Is it flight or flee, or is it to say that they will take the problem challenge head on and tackle it? So you'd see the kind of response that they have, and what is the kind of response, or what kind of way they would deal with a situation. That's what tells you what's the kind of attitude. Are they go-getters? Are they ones that want to go and solve a problem, get things done, or are they people who, when confronted with a situation, will try and avoid facing the situation, or deflect, or sort of run away from the situation? So you do get to understand that by asking the right questions, and trying and understanding people's reactions, or how they deal with situations and the scenarios.
Thank you, Saji. Yeah, Divya, I can see you here.
Yes, I am not able to resist that
I can see
question.
that.
And
Yes,
I think
please.
Saji put it
Mhm.
so beautifully. And I have to say that, the initial days we were adapting to the pandemic situation and to the digital world. That is for sure, right? But I think over the last 24 months or so, we've sort of now got used to this so well. I would still harness on that topic what I've mentioned earlier, Lakshmi, that I would value individuals who harness the power of yet, right? Someone who is saying, look, I do not possess the skills, but yet I would like to acquire them. I'm a self-paced learner, I'm someone who can adapt, I'm someone who can handle ambiguity pretty well. I have the persistence, I will persevere it, So these are some pointers which help me pick the right candidate. While the functional mastery is always evaluated and a given, I think these are the differentiators. How diverse is their thinking to a situation, and how they do not give a stereotype or prescribed answers is what gives an edge to a candidate. That's my view, Lakshmi.
Thank you, Divya. I'm going to come back to you. Let me go to Kiran and get her responses, and I'm going to come back to you with a follow-up question on this.
Sure.
Over to you, Kiran.
Right. It's very interesting what Saji and Divya have shared, right? Similarly, just to add on to that, very clearly, there are pointers, though we have adapted what Divya has mentioned, right? We've adapted to the pandemic and virtual hiring. What is interesting is it's not just the physical body language cues, which we get to see when we are doing in-person interviewing.
Yeah.
It could be the email which they send out. It could be the way they present their bio or a resume. It's the tone and the tonality, right? Every single thing is a cue, which presents and showcases the attitude of an individual. Now, having said that, we talked about situation and behavioral interviewing. Another way to look at it is also, I'm reminded of, there was a time when we were interviewing IITians to get into one of the large B schools, a popular B school in India, right, the ISB. And I remember being in that panel. And one of the key things we've done is, hey, we know you're all bright and smart, and because from a hard
Absolutely.
skills and
Yeah.
IQ, we don't really have to worry. They've already, entered into the portals of such major premium schools. Now, the key test for us is in terms of their attitude. So I used to pose a question where I say, hey, you know what? imagine if it's in a hotel, we were doing it. The first thing I would ask is, okay, imagine now you are the manager for this, right? You're appointed as the manager or as the general manager, whatever. Now you need to quickly give us an estimate of how many glasses, water glasses you need, right? And we would give them, okay, ballpark, so many rooms, so much of, square centimeters, square meters, whatever. Now, the point is, whatever the problem, they're all extremely sharp when it comes to IQ. They would problem solve it in few seconds and tell you exactly what it would mean in terms of algorithm or a mathematical formula. So my question was, hey, we're not interested in getting to the answer, and I'm not even interested in knowing what number you arrive at. Walk me through your approach. Tell me, how do you go to the first step? What are you thinking? So just translate your thoughts. Help me understand, handhold me in terms of walking across your mind share. That is where we realized that is a separation of wheat from the chaff. The attitude of the individual, the way they're going to walk you through, handhold you, the attitude is clearly presented through that particular situation. Just walking through, that's what we are saying. And we're not interested in the answer. Right or wrong doesn't matter. It's the approach. So I think that is exactly what we mean when we say, how do we assess someone's attitude or observe or sense check, right? There would be n number of ways to do that. If you're experienced, I think our exposure and experience as folks who are sitting on the other side of the table, having seen multiple individuals, is more to not to be detrimental. Again, we're looking at someone who fits the organization. They could be really super duper and smart, but would they be culturally aligned to the organization and at the life cycle stage the organization is in? I think those are very, very important parameters we would look at from an attitude. Again, we're not writing off someone saying you have a poor attitude or a bad attitude. That's not what I mean or what we mean. We're trying to say, does this attitudinal mindset you carry today really align with where we are as an organization? Can you come in and be happy with us?
Thank you so much, Kiran. I think you summed up the entire discussion for us in this response of yours, but it was absolutely wonderful. I was looking at certain instances like that. In fact, my next question, Divya, I remember I have to come back to you. I will. Before that, as Kiran was talking, so this thought of when you assess a candidate, you have these checks and balances, and you look at those certain attitudes and all of those. I just have one question to all of you, and no biases, disclaimer up front, Saji here. But what I just want to understand from you, if you have had instances from your experiences being the hiring manager or of any of your colleagues where you have placed the importance of soft skills to hire a diversity candidate vis-a-vis a non-diversity candidate. Any one of you?
Absolutely, yes, Lakshmi. And again, I'll go back to what Saji mentioned earlier. There is a functional role you're looking at. The company I represent, Western Digital, we have two tracks. One is the professional track, the other is the management track. When we look at the dual career track, while hard skills are important in both the tracks, the soft skills become much more relevant and important as we look at senior levels. And that's where, if I'm getting a diversity candidate, manager and above, that's where I'm going to surely, make a huge case saying, I need diversity, gender diversity, obviously, because diversity can, right here. I need this candidate much more than any other, primarily because if both of them are equal, in terms of their IQ, in terms of, the education background, I'm going to prefer the diversity candidate simply because one is, I need the diversity in the organization. It's a business imperative, A. B is, we've also seen the goodness of how a diversity candidate can manage from a people management skills, people skills, and certain other attributes which we refer to. So I would prefer, and I remember instances where we have taken that call. And this is a hiring manager's dilemma. The dilemma is to hire, not to hire. Whom do I hire? Because both of them seem to be equally good when it comes to education, when it comes to exposure, when it comes to experience. So if push comes to shove, I'm going to, cast a vote to the diversity hire because I'm going to get much more through that if everything is equal.
Saji.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that, like Kiran said, you would, as an organization, as an individual, that's something that you would look at, especially when you're hiring for leadership roles, like she said, or for management roles. Because again, I think, not just, each of our individual organizations, but in India as a whole, if you look at all the organizations, the number of women in leadership roles are few and far between. I mean, we still, lag far behind the West, even in that matter. And that's one area where we need to give a lot more push to encourage women to, one, get that confidence to even be, feel that they can be there at the, that leadership level and drive things at that level. So that's where, we as hiring managers and people who are involved in the whole hiring process, can give that additional push. If we have two candidates, yes, we will definitely look at the diversity candidate, to hire for the leadership role, because that's where we believe that's a higher need for, we need more diverse candidates, we need more diversity at that level. And like Kiran said, definitely they add more, to the table in terms of bringing in a diverse set of views, and also being, better at maybe managing people, negotiating skills. So you definitely want to see more of that at the leadership and managerial levels.
So, Divya, what are the top 5 skills that hiring manager look for? And I would want you also to respond to, if you've had those kind of instances where you have placed importance to a diversity candidate simply because you placed importance to the power of yet.
Yes, I think most hiring managers definitely look at functional mastery, right? And that's a no-brainer. And I'm sure they look at critical thinking, problem solving, analytical, conceptual thinking, all of that is a given. And for me, a diversity candidate plays a huge impact, especially in functions where I see dwindling numbers on the gender diversity. I've always been a pro towards hiring gender diverse candidate. And I have to tell you this, Lakshmi, at Genesys, we've moved the needle on gender diversity really well. And we are a great places to work organization 5 times in a row. And we've grown leaps and bounds, not just in number, but at the maturity of the site. The cross-functional, the heterogeneous initiatives are all led by women. Now, that is something telling of us, right? Our people strategy in Genesys is completely aligned to our business strategy, driving innovation, collaboration, culture of empathy, and inclusion. And I think a female candidate, more so in a gender diversity situation, fits the bill. And I'm a person who likes to break the all boys team always. No offense there, Saji, but I like to do that most often, and I end up winning that bet. So I think it's good that we have a gender diverse candidate, and I have huge patronage from hiring managers, because when somebody sees the result, it has a cascading ripple effect across the organization. And that's so telling of it. Lakshmi.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Divya. In fact, you're also part of the best companies for women in India, which
That's
is Avtar and Working Mothers, the 100 best company study that and gender analytics study that we conduct every year. So thank you so much for that. Coming back to you again, Divya, you spoke about power of yet. So you talk about learnability being one of the most important skill, right? I mean, of course, like one of my colleagues keeps saying that I don't want to take the elbow out of my car. I would want to be the learner always. So being a learner, yes, even I call myself a learner for life. So, do organizations actually encourage their employees to practice soft skills at workplace, and how do they do so? And I would want each one of you to respond to this, being in the space of talent acquisition and HR, all of you.
Sure.
Yeah,
Can I go first?
sure.
Kiran and Saji. So I want to tell you, for someone to blossom in this space of soft skills, I think the organization should give them a real safe zone for them to make mistakes. I think it's important that an employee can bring his or her authentic self to work. And that's when these skills really blossom in an individual. I think at Genesys, we have so many avenues, as I mentioned earlier, heterogeneous initiatives. And I think one initiative which really stood really tall and still rules the road out here in Genesys is the Toastmasters Club. We've had it for almost 5 years. And I think the Genesys Toastmasters Club has won many prestigious awards, is a Golden Gavel Toastmaster Club. And I see a lot of individuals finding it as a very safe zone to learn and unlearn and make mistakes. It is an avenue for someone who's rising up in the leadership roles to take different roles within the Toastmasters and understand how they steer a team towards results. And I think initiatives like book club, which is there in Genesys, where somebody reads a book and cascades the essence of that book and the point of view the author wants to bring in, is a great powerful medium of storytelling for many to follow. I think a lot of initiatives in Genesys like tech talks, the employee-led editorial team, which is called as Tarang in Genesys, are all a huge hit. And that speaks to your question, Lakshmi, that these avenues which are led by heterogeneous employees without leaders actually wanting to lead it, because you see a lot of millennials taking part in it. I think that is the forum we want to give to everyone who joins Genesys.
Okay, that's very interesting. Over to you, Saji.
Yeah, so there's a number of things that we do. We have a women's network within our organization where women get together and network with each other to discuss common issues, common problems, or to talk about how they can address issues. So that's a networking platform that we've created for our women employees. We've also run what's the internal career pathing program that Avtar runs for potential women leaders. So 50 of our potential women leaders went through that program last year, and that's really helped them. And in fact, we saw about 15 of them getting promoted to supervisory or managerial roles as a result of going through that program. So really beneficial for a lot of them that went through that program. And the universal feedback was that they all gained from it, not just by going through the program, but hearing of experiences from others really, and learning from that, and really getting to know how they could develop their own careers through that. So number of initiatives like that we're running. We also get senior leadership from the organization, both from our US office and here, to talk about their experiences and how they've grown in the organization, what are the kind of challenges they faced and how they went through that, how they lived through that and were still able to manage their careers. So that also helps build that confidence. And I think a lot of the times it's about giving people the confidence and the belief that they also have the opportunity to grow their careers. Because what you typically find, especially in India, is a lot of women after spending about 5 to 8 years in an organization, and when they have a few children, 1 or 2 children who are in that school going stage, they tend to have kind of dual thought whether they should continue with their careers or whether they should focus on their families. Sometimes pressure from spouses or the parents or in-laws, etc. And that's when a lot of them tend to either neglect their careers or just give it up. And that's where we are trying to see how we can support women, give a better work-life balance to them, provide some benefits in terms of creche facilities, etc., so that they can manage their family lives and still continue to have a meaningful career.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Saji. ICP, the Intentional Career Path thing, that it's a flagship product by Avtar, wherein we talk about the key skills, the key strategic skills that are required for an Indian woman professional, in the context of Indian women professional, to have a career continuum. More importantly, even if you take a break in your careers, how can you maintain the continuum in your career with the key skills? And those are the skills that are developed in a module format. And I'm so glad and thrilled that women professionals at your organization are benefiting. Thank you so much for that, Saji. Over to you, Kiran, on the same note.
So it's interesting listening to what Divya and Saji have shared. I would say there are several of those initiatives which are part of Western Digital. But what I would like to also focus upon, in addition to what they have shared, is we bring in what we refer to. I mean, we do have the Women in Engineering Network, and but it's an innovation. I mean, a company which runs on innovation. So what we unveil to them year on year is several hackathons where they participate in so that they can sharpen their saw. We bring in what we refer to as, especially the pandemic, we made it virtual. We called it an innovation bazaar. So they can keep going from one store to another. So it's the bazaar, just as a typical Indian bazaar. So you keep going from one, store to the other on the street, and you keep, so, but here, what is on sale is ideas. So it's about listening to those ideas, and then do you want to buy, do you want to sell? So what is the trading happening? It's more of ideas galore. So we've done innovation bazaars, and we've also encourage and do what is referred to as patent days. And the whole idea is to continue to foster and grow this zeal along with the soft skills. How do they continue to build on their technical skills and the knowledge? Because that's going to fuel their career. That's going to really build on and shaping, where they're headed. So they can also choose, just as I talked about the dual career path earlier, they can choose which path, and they can keep moving between those two ladders. It's not necessary that once they've chosen one track, that's it, the decision is made and they can never revert. They can always move laterally. And how does that help, you might say? It helps because for a woman, given her choice points at different stages of her life cycle, she may want to give up on the management ladder because managing people, managing various other things sometimes may suck more time. And given the responsibilities at home, maybe the child is now coming to that 9th, 10th, 11th, which is considered to be extremely important. And women generally spend a little more time helping the child really cope with the stress of that moment. So we say, all right, you can take into, or you can move into the professional track so that nothing changes, but you can just deliver on your deliverables and outcomes and not really look at, the number of meetings you have to get into if you're on the management track. So that's one clear, what do we say, a need which we understood and helped women really to continue to grow. And when they're ready to move back onto the management track, they can do so. So that's one which I clearly see as an advantage. And the other one which comes to my mind is, how do we continue to build on not just the soft skills? In terms of soft skills would mean, they have the right attitude, they know how to present themselves, but we also understand, given our cultures, a lot of the women will wait for their turn to speak, or unless they're spoken to, do not speak. It's not because they lack the ability or the capability. So to build in that confidence, to have that voice, and every time to pick up and say, hey, I have something to add. We started building in terms of a program called Advancing Women in Leadership. So we have a specific program, and it's not a program which limits them only to India as a landscape or region. They meet up with women across the geographies in Western Digital, so they can be influenced and inspired and learn from each other. So we're bringing in that communities of practice, as we say, among women. And another important piece which I have to share is we talk about allyship. So we talk about male allies, managers as allies. So we bring that in. In fact, we celebrate every year. Of course, it's not a day we need to celebrate, but we continue to celebrate the International Women's Day in March. But when we do that, we make it very, very important, not just to bring in the voice of the women, but also to bring in all those supporters and allies who have done far better, and what are their best practices in building groups or teams where there are more gender diversity in terms of, so that's how we keep tracking in terms of how they have done, how did the needle move, what have they done in terms of best practices in engaging and retaining women. So we're also looking at it earlier. I loved what Divya said, right? So it's not just the responsibility of human resources, but we're saying everyone is responsible for this. It's part of the DNA and culture of the organization. So we bring in male allies, and they talk about, the case studies or the case slits in terms of what have they done to attract, engage, as well as retain women and continue to advance. So I think those are the key strokes with which we are able to really look at gender diversity and continue to enhance that in an industry sector where, especially hardware, where it's underrepresented. It's much harder to continue to build in, but we have made forays and we have really moved the needle. And it was 14% about 4 years ago. And today we have crossed the 20% mark and steadily marching ahead. So we are so proud and happy to continue to invite more women to grow with us and enjoy the journey.
Thank you so much. That was really remarkable and commendable. So we spoke about the power of it. We spoke about developing soft skills, right? Soft skills are something that any individual, gender agnostic, it's not anything specific to a gender or any diversity strand. So of course, we Saji also mentioned about how these soft skills actually translate to business case in organizations. Before by way of asking for closing remarks from each one of you, I have a question to the women, and Saji, please, you pitch in too here. I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate here. So do you think there is an added pressure on women professionals to demonstrate some of these soft skills while exhibiting, the competence and the authority, or, if you're a leader, you will certainly exhibit certain competence and certain authority, certain lead, that typically comes with attributed towards the leadership qualities. But do you think women professionals, or you have personally faced certain incidents where you felt the added pressure of demonstrating those soft skills that are typically attributed with women? Any one
I'll
of you?
take a stab at it.
Yes,
Let
please.
me
I
let
want
me
you to.
try answering it.
I want you to.
Lakshmi, I think most often, right, when you walk into the boardroom, you find that you're the lone woman out there, right? And you're set thinking, okay, now here's your chance, right? But then I want to tell you, I look at it as an opportunity, right? Because certain things which come very naturally to women are some of these qualities. So why not, capitalize or enhance that quality and bring it as a strength you want to stand by tall, right? And I also think we can lead by example and also coach our fellow managers to follow some of those practices. And I think this is an opportunity I would never want to miss. So I've never had the pressure, but I've always had this this feeling that why am I the lone woman in the boardroom, right? And how do we move the needle, get peers into the boardroom? And I keep telling this to all the women folk in brown bag sessions that if you're not helping another woman, you're going to find a place in hell. So better help another woman and bring her up into that ladder, right? So I believe in that, Lakshmi.
Thank you so much, Divya. And I knew that you were just wanting to take that, raring to go. To you, Kiran.
So it's interesting, when we talk about a decade, 2 decades ago, yeah, absolutely. You're the lone woman out there. Today, with multi-generational workforces we enjoy, especially India, you see right from baby boomer generation to the Gen Z. And what is enthralling is the passion, the energy, what the millennials and the Gen Z bring to the table. I do not think they have the same constraints, from a stereotypical world some of us may have entered into and worked our way up. So one way to look at it is the world has changed because now the millennials are much more gender agnostic than we were. And that's where my hope is. They're not looking at it with respect to, is it because it's the identity. Identity is what I choose, right? Whether it's male, female, or any other gender, whatever I want to represent myself as, that has come in. And that is where my hope and my pride of today's workplace is. And having said that, now, are there instances when you feel, well, you're waiting for your turn, or are there instances when you're trying to speak And again, that's a stereotype, right? You don't want to sound authoritative. You don't want to sound too meek. Now, how do you adjust, whether it's your voice, your body language? Are you sitting at the table? Are you sitting at the second,
row of the
layer or row? Because these are some of the key questions, I think, when women started getting into the boardrooms or getting into senior executive roles, where they were the only ones, as Divya mentioned, and there were no ground rules set. And there is always this dilemma, should I, shouldn't I? And there's no one who is going to guide you or nudge you, not in every workplace, right? So that was quite a tough spot to be in. But bravo to all of those women, right, who have made it, who continue to stick there, and inspired and role model for several other women. Because research has shown very clearly, women drop out of the workforce, or women do not continue to aspire to grow. That aspirational quotient is lower because they do not have adequate role models. They do not see more women in the leadership roles or in the boardrooms. So I think that is so much more important today for us to continue to give out this clarion call and say, come on in, we really need you. We have the, you have to make your space, but we are getting ready for it. I think as organizations and ecosystems become more and more open, that's where you see this diversity, which we're debating, or the stereotypes which we're talking about, will fall by the wayside. And that's why I had to refer to the millennial generation, where they're very, very gender agnostic. Each one is going for the kill and say, I got it. And they're going to demand and say, why am I not eligible? I'm here and I can deliver. I am the person who is bringing in my whole self. And that's my belief firmly.
Thank you, Kiran. I would really request Saji to respond to it as well, because you're the only one seem to be adding the diversity here, adding to the diversity in this group.
No, yes. So, I mean, one thing that I would concur with from what Kiran has said is that really the millennials today, really there's no holding back, and they are ready with their questions, and if they have an idea, they'll come forth and put it there and say, look, I have an idea and this is what I think we could do, and they don't hesitate. Whereas, like, maybe people from our generation or women from our generation might hesitate to do that, and especially, like you mentioned, in the leadership roles in the boardroom, I think a lot of the responsibility is also on the men. And as you said, I mean, it's about the environment that you create in the boardroom. I mean, if you've got just one woman or a couple of women in the boardroom, what's the kind of environment you are creating for them to participate wholly in that that whole leadership meet and be part of the leadership group? I mean, if you as men or as the majority factor are creating an environment where you guys dominate and you don't allow these people a seat at the table, or really an equal presence on the table, and allow them that opportunity to speak. I'm sure that initially, when you're the first woman or you're among the one or two women on the leadership table, there will always be an hesitation to speak up or to put your point of view across. But if the right environment is created by the entire group, and that's where I think the CEO and the rest of the leadership team has a big role to play, in terms of the kind of environment and culture that they create within that team, to encourage participation and encourage equal, involvement of everybody. And if that's done, I don't think there's anything that can stop anybody. And that's, you see that really, I mean, in different teams, I mean, where, you may have one or two women only, but they're equally as, participative and as involved in the whole proceedings as everybody else. And there are some teams where a few men dominate, and that's because the kind of environment they've created.
Thank you. Thank you, Saji. I think we've come close to the session now. So one quick round as a rapid fire. I request each one of you to attribute those 2 or 3 skills, not more than 3, because it's not going to take much time, that you as a hiring manager or somebody at the hiring table would look for from the candidates. Let me start with Saji.
Clearly, somebody who has this whole can-do attitude and wanting to learn. Something like, what Divya said about yet. I mean, I may not know everything, but I want to learn. I want to, develop my skills, and I want to grow. That whole growth mindset, that's something that's, especially in today's world, that's, I think, the key skill that most hiring managers are today looking for. Somebody who wants to come in and contribute and make a difference and wants to learn. That whole wanting to learn, wanting to do more, that's what most organizations or hiring managers today are looking for. That's a key skill, but that's the key requirement from an organizational perspective.
Thank you, Saji. Divya.
For me, I look at candidates who are fearless, Lakshmi.
I love that word. I just love that word. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Dare to really challenge status quo. That's my candidate, right? I look at someone who's an out-of-box thinker, someone who's completely different from me, from a very diverse background, because I firmly believe that we learn constantly throughout our life. And I learn a lot from my team members. I have a bunch of real high performers in my team. I learn, they learn, and we create an environment which is so different. And I look at someone who wants to challenge status quo all the time and fearless. That's the word I look for.
Thank you, Divya. Kiran.
Awesome. I would look at the tennis language of, ACE. So if I look at those three critical skills, A stands for agility, adaptability. C stands for creativity. And E stands for not just empathy and emotional intelligence, but ethical responsibility. So that's what would be very, very critical for me when I'm looking for, gender diverse candidates, but who have the creative juices along with the adaptability, that's a learnability, as well as, of course, the ethical responsibility.
That's power-packed session today. Thank you so much, Kiran and Saji and Divya. So the key takeaways for you candidates is 1, be fearless and please control the power of it. Master the power of it, because you're going to learn, you're a learner, and you're going to excel continuously in your career continuum. Thank you so much, Saji, Divya, and Kiran for this wonderful panel discussion. And my audience, I just want to let you know that if you want to know and understand more about the illustrious careers of the panelists that we have, please do go to the lobby and click on the Know Your Speakers tab to know more about our speakers. And hope you all had a great day at the job fair and you found the work that works for you. Thank you so much, Saji, Divya, and Kiran. Thank you, audience, for watching us.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
Thank you, Lakshmi and Avtar team.
Go Avtar.